I regret having you as my first child. You are useless." Those words didn't just leave my father's mouth, they carved themselves into my skin. I felt them tear through me as I sat there, frozen, a forkful of mashed potatoes stuck halfway between my plate and my lips. It was our usual Sunday dinner. The roast chicken smelled of rosemary and butter, and the sweet corn glistened in its bowl. My mother had spent the day preparing it, hoping, as she always did, that good food might fix what was broken in our home. But food couldn't fix the poison that had been growing between my father and me. Across the table, my mother's eyes filled with quiet panic. My sister, Rachel, looked like she'd stopped breathing. And then, there was he, my younger brother, Ethan. He sat back with that smug look on his face, a slow, almost satisfied smirk resting on his lips. He didn't have to say a word. His silence was louder than a scream. I dropped my cutlery gently. My hand trembled as I dabbed the corners of my mouth with a napkin. I had rehearsed the moment I would finally walk away in my head 1,000 times. But nothing could prepare me for the pain that clamped around my chest as I pushed back my chair and stood up. "I always knew you hated me," I said, my voice breaking despite my best effort to hold it steady. "You may hate me today, Dad, but one day, you will look for me." "Don't be dramatic," he muttered, waving me off like a nuisance. I looked to my mother. She reached out, desperate to hold my hand, to say something, anything. But she didn't. She couldn't. None of them could. And so I walked out of the house I had once called home, with no plan. No job. No savings. Only a broken heart, my old Toyota Prius, and a silent vow. Before we begin today's unforgettable story, welcome to Whispers of Reality, where real-life inspired stories come to life with raw emotion, suspense, and powerful truths. From heartbreaking betrayals to jaw-dropping comebacks, shocking secrets to soul-stirring moments, every story on this channel is a whisper from reality itself. These aren't just stories, they're experiences you'll feel. If you believe in the power of storytelling and love content that moves, inspires, and keeps you coming back for more, make sure to hit that subscribe button, tap the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear the truth behind today's tale. Now, sit back, open your heart, and let the whispers begin. My name is Bright. And once upon a time, I was the pride of my family. The firstborn son. The obedient one. The responsible one. The one who made sacrifices no one ever asked for, and no one ever remembered. But everything I gave, everything I lost, and everything I endured was never enough. I didn't always hate my father. In fact, growing up, I worshipped him. He was my hero, my compass. I wanted to become everything he was, and more. After college, when I got my first job as a junior accountant, he was the first person I called. He told me he was proud of me, and I believed him. I sent home my first paycheck. I didn't have much, but I bought groceries, paid the light bill, and slipped some money into my sister Rachel's savings. I covered my mother's medical prescriptions for her blood pressure and took care of Ethan, my little brother, the family's eternal project. Ethan gave us more heartache than peace, but I still bailed him out each time he messed up. I had dreams of my own. I wanted to save, to travel, to build a life I could call mine. But I kept putting those dreams on hold, telling myself that family comes first. That was the lie I lived, and bled for. But the thing about selflessness is this: when people get used to your giving, they stop seeing it as love. They start to see it as your duty. The change came quietly. It started the day Ethan pulled into the driveway with a brand new black Camaro. No warning. No explanation. The car sat in the driveway like a shadow, swallowing everything I thought I knew. Next came the designer shoes. The watches. The expensive perfume. My brother, who couldn't hold down a job or keep his hands out of other people's wallets, was suddenly doing well. When I asked what he was into, he said, business. When I pressed, he said, import and export. I knew better. He had always been reckless. Always hungry for shortcuts. And yet, somehow, my father bought the lie. Suddenly, it was like I didn't exist anymore. I remember sitting across the living room from my dad as he bragged about Ethan paying off the mortgage. I was holding an unpaid utility bill in my hand, because my last paycheck had gone into replacing Mum's broken blood pressure machine. I tried to remind him about it, to get him to see that I was still trying. But he looked at me that day and said, maybe it's time you stop leaning on excuses. That line. It cut deeper than anything Ethan had ever done to me. When I lost my job, it felt like someone ripped the ground from under me. The company merged with another firm, and those of us without advanced certifications were let go. I didn't blame them. While others were learning new skills, I was learning how to stretch medication across 2 weeks, how to juggle bills, how to survive on barely anything. When I came home and told my father, he didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't ask what I planned to do next. He just said, well, you better figure it out soon. This house runs on results, not excuses. I still remember the burn in my chest, the sting in my eyes. I walked out of the room, closed the door behind me, and stood in the dark, wondering where the love had gone. Then that night. That fateful dinner night that he called me useless. I packed a small duffel bag. 3 shirts. 2 pairs of jeans. My old college hoodie. I had no money. No job. No plan. But I had something else. Something burning. Something rising. As I drove out of the house and into the quiet Texas night, I didn't cry. Not then. I had cried too many times already. I had whispered to myself, they will remember me. And when they do, it will be too late. That was the day the old me died. The hopeful me. The loyal son. The forgotten child. And from his ashes, I began to rise, one silent day at a time, building a future not for love, but for revenge. Starting over with nothing strips you bare. You see the world for what it is. You learn who you really are when no one is coming to save you. I spent the first few weeks sleeping in my car. The Texas summer was brutal, hot days, restless nights. I parked in quiet neighborhoods, far from prying eyes. Sometimes, I'd walk into gas stations just to wash my face and feel human again. Other times, I'd stare at myself in the rearview mirror and barely recognize the man looking back. I looked like a ghost, unshaved, sunken eyes, lips dry from dehydration and silence. But inside, something had started to shift. I wasn't broken anymore. I was becoming hollow, and dangerous. During the day, I searched for jobs, any job. I walked into stores with resumes, filled out online applications at public libraries, sat in coffee shops pretending to belong. It took weeks, but eventually, I landed something. A temporary job at a warehouse sorting packages. It was dirty, exhausting, and paid just enough to keep me alive. I didn't complain. I didn't need comfort, I needed a way out. Every night after work, I stayed back, helping out the shift manager just so I could ask questions. I listened. I watched. I learned. I studied systems, logistics, supply chains. I took notes. I enrolled in free online courses, reading by streetlight when I couldn't afford Wi-Fi. Nobody noticed the tired man sorting boxes had a fire burning in his chest. 6 months in, the manager pulled me aside. "You're sharp," he said. "You think fast. Ever considered staying long-term?" I told him I was open to it. He recommended me for a warehouse coordinator position in Houston. It paid more. I took the offer. I moved. From there, it was like climbing a staircase in the dark, step by step, careful not to fall. I worked. I learned. I took night classes. I earned certifications in logistics management, procurement, data systems. With every new skill, I sharpened my mind. I kept my head down, but my heart never forgot. I never forgot that dinner table. My father's voice. My brother's smirk. My mother's silence. 2 years later, I was hired by a mid-size logistics firm in Dallas. I didn't just work, I excelled. I optimized routes, cut waste, increased profits. Within 18 months, I was promoted to senior analyst. That's when I bought my first apartment. Then came the new car. Then came my first vacation, alone, to Colorado. I stood in the mountains and screamed so loud the air vibrated around me. Not from joy, but from the pain that still lived in my bones. I had everything they said I was never worth. And yet, the satisfaction wasn't complete. Because the wound wasn't just in the past, it still bled. 3 years later, I met Amanda. She was warm, quiet, and gentle with her words. She worked in the same building, in HR. I had grown into a reserved man by then, polite, distant, always busy. But she was patient. She saw the sadness in my eyes and didn't ask questions too soon. She gave me space until I was ready to tell her the truth. And when I did, she didn't pity me. She just held my hand and said, "You deserved better." We got married a year later. Then came our daughter, Ava. The first time I held her, I wept. Not for joy, but for the boy I once was, the boy who had begged his father to see him. Ava saw me with eyes that loved without judgment. But even as I built a new life, I never let go of the old pain. Every year, I sent anonymous donations to cancer research in my father's name, not out of love, but as a reminder to myself that I could give without giving in. I kept track of Ethan. I knew he'd get caught eventually. His lifestyle was too loud. His ego too big. And I was right. 7 years after I walked out of that house, I woke up to a breaking news alert: local man arrested in large-scale fraud case. Over $2 million in assets seized. It was Ethan, his face was all over the news. And suddenly, the calls started. It was on a Thursday. Amanda was in the kitchen, singing softly as she packed Ava's lunch for daycare. I had just brewed a fresh pot of coffee and opened my laptop. My morning ritual. Life had become quiet, predictable, safe. Then my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. Texas area code, but not one I had saved. I hesitated, staring at the screen as if it might explode. Something inside me tightened, a strange, cold whisper brushing against my spine. I answered. At first, there was only silence. Then a soft rustle. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 7 years. Bright. My name. My full name. Spoken in a tone too weak to be commanding, too strained to be proud. It was my father. The air in the room thinned instantly. Amanda's voice faded into the background. My hand tightened around the phone, my knuckles turning white. I stood up, slowly, and walked out to the patio. I didn't expect to hear from you, I said calmly. He coughed, harsh and ragged. Then he sighed. I wanted to talk. Things are not, they're not good. I didn't respond. He continued, voice brittle like old paper, Ethan's in jail. The feds took everything. The cars. The house. The accounts. I'm sick. Stage 4. Lung cancer. They say it's aggressive. I stared at the horizon. The morning sun was rising behind the trees, casting golden light across the grass. It should have felt like a beautiful day. But all I felt was nothing. Just a void where love used to live. I know I made mistakes, he added. I wasn't fair to you. I see that now. I nearly laughed. Mistakes. He called what he did to me a mistake. He robbed me of my dignity. He discarded me like spoiled food. He watched me walk into the night without shelter, without hope, and did nothing. And now, because the throne he handed to Ethan had crumbled, he remembered the son he threw away. I'm not calling for forgiveness, he said, as if reading my silence. I just need help. Help. That word echoed like thunder inside my skull. I'll think about it, I said. He tried to say more, but I ended the call. Then I went inside, kissed Amanda on the forehead, and dropped Ava off at daycare like nothing had happened. But deep inside, I was angry. The wound I had buried beneath 7 years of silence and progress had begun to bleed again. Except this time, I wasn't the broken boy sitting at a dinner table being called useless. I was a man with power. With peace. With a purpose. And I was ready to answer his call. With vengeance. Then I visited the place that I once called home. The last time I stood in front of that house, I had nothing. No job. No money. No home. No love. Now, I parked a sleek black SUV by the curb, stepped out in a tailored suit, and adjusted the cuffs of my shirt as I looked up at the house that once spat me out. The place looked smaller. Older. Forgotten. The garden was overgrown. Paint peeled from the window frames. The front steps were cracked, weeds growing through the gaps. What used to be a symbol of family pride was now a ruin, a quiet reflection of the choices that were made inside its walls. I took a deep breath, walked up the steps, and knocked on the door. It opened slowly. And there he was. My father. Thinner. Grayer. Slouched like a tired tree stripped bare by time. The man who once sat at the head of the table with booming authority now held onto the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping him upright. For a second, he just stared at me. I don't know what he expected to see. Maybe the boy he last saw, broken and defeated. But I had buried that boy long ago. Bright, he said. My name again, this time laced with something close to relief. Hello, Dad, I replied, keeping my voice flat. He stepped aside, and I walked in. The house smelled like medicine and dust. Hospital supplies sat on the living room floor, oxygen tanks, pill bottles, a walker. A single blanket lay rumpled on the couch. The television played softly in the background. My father shuffled over to the armchair and slowly sat down. His breathing was heavy, labored. I could see the cancer had taken its toll. I remained standing. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. I almost didn't. A long silence passed between us. The weight of years, of silence, of betrayal hung in the air like smoke. He looked up at me. "I made mistakes. I see that now. When Ethan started bringing in money, I let myself be blinded. I was proud, yes, but not in the right son." My jaw clenched. He was finally saying the words. But they didn't land like he thought they would. They were too late. "I thought maybe," he continued, his voice cracking, "maybe you could help. Just a little. I've sold almost everything. Rachel sends what she can, but the treatments," I raised a hand. "I didn't come to talk about treatments," I said. His eyes searched mine. "Then why did you come?" I stepped forward slowly, pulled a folded piece of paper from my inside pocket, and laid it on the table in front of him. It was a bank statement. Not his. Mine. He opened it with trembling hands. His eyes widened. He looked up. You're doing well. "I built everything you see with my bare hands," I said. "No shortcuts. No fraud. No stolen comfort. Just hard work. Sacrifice. Pain. While you praised a thief and turned your back on your firstborn." He looked down, ashamed. I continued, "not because I care. But because I wanted you to see what you threw away." He blinked rapidly. "So, you won't help?" I smiled. Not with joy. Not with pride. But with peace. "Help?" I said. "No. That man died 7 years ago, right after dinner." I turned to leave. "Bright," he called out, voice weak, desperate. "I'm dying." I paused at the door, turned slightly. "Then die knowing this," I said, my voice calm and cold. "I became everything you wanted in a son, and I saved none of it for you." I walked out into the sun, my heart steady. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel pride. I felt closure. And for a man like me, that was enough. 3 days passed before the second call came. It was Rachel. She was crying. "Bright, he's not doing well. He's in the hospital now. He collapsed last night. They say it's spreading too fast, they don't think he has long." Her voice cracked. "You're the only one who hasn't said goodbye." I was silent. She waited. But I gave her nothing. "Please," she whispered. "He keeps asking for you." I thanked her for calling. Then I hung up. That night, I sat on the balcony, a glass of water in my hand, watching Ava sleep through the nursery monitor. Amanda came out and sat beside me, wrapping herself in a blanket. "You saw him, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "And did it help?" I looked into the night sky. "Yes," I said. "It helped. But I didn't smile. I couldn't. Peace isn't always warm. Sometimes, it's cold. Sometimes, it comes dressed in silence and dressed in steel." I had waited 7 years for that moment, to return, not as a son, but as a mirror. To make him see what he discarded. To let him beg. and to walk away. The next morning, I got a text from Rachel. 2 words, "He's gone." I stared at the screen. No reaction came. No tears. No guilt. Only the echo of the last words I said to him. Then die knowing this. I became everything you wanted in a son, and I saved none of it for you. The funeral was private. Small. Rachel said only a few people came. She asked if I wanted to say anything for the obituary. I declined. I told Amanda I didn't want Ava there. I didn't want my daughter seeing me carry the weight of a man who never carried me. She didn't press. That week, I took time off work. Not to mourn, but to reflect. I thought about my mother, how she watched me walk out that night and said nothing. I thought about Ethan, rotting in jail, alone with his consequences. I thought about my father, once mighty, now just another name on a headstone. And I thought about myself. The boy who once needed love so badly. He had finally buried the man who denied it. But as the days passed, a strange kind of ache began to grow. Not regret. Not sorrow. Something different. I had one. But I had no one left to show. No one left to remember that I was once the son who stayed. The son who gave everything. The son who waited at the dinner table, for 7 long years, for a different ending. But life had already served the final course. One night, I sat alone and opened a notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "This is for Ava. So she will know what pain made me become." I began to write, everything. The betrayal. The exile. The climb. The revenge. Not to glorify it, but to warn her. So she would never confuse silence for peace, or money for love. So she would never beg for affection from anyone who calls her useless. So she would never become the son I had been. Or the man I had become. I often sit in the quiet now. Not out of sadness, but out of necessity. When you walk through fire and survive, you learn to value silence, not the kind that numbs you, but the kind that teaches you how to breathe again. Amanda says I talk less than I used to. She's right. It's not that I don't have words. It's just that most of the words I carry were meant for a man who is no longer alive to hear them. Some nights, I watch Ava sleep and wonder what kind of father I will become. Will I know how to love her right? Will I know how to correct her without scarring her? Will I know how to see her even when she fails? Because I know what it feels like to be invisible. To be seated at the table and still not be counted. To be the one who stayed, the one who sacrificed, and still be called useless. I never want her to feel that. A few weeks after the funeral, I returned to the old house one last time. It had been sold off, auctioned, emptied, forgotten. The weeds were taller. The windows cracked. The door was left unlocked. I walked through it slowly. Every room echoed with memories, none of them kind. The living room, where my father once called Ethan our miracle. The dinner table, where my heart had finally broken. I stood there for a long time. Not to mourn. Not to remember. But to say goodbye to the boy who once lived here. Yes, I got my revenge. Brutal. Cold. Final. But what I cherish more is the quiet strength I built from the ashes. The love I give my daughter freely. The stability I built with Amanda. The peace I earned, not by being better than them, but by being nothing like them. If you ask me whether I regret it, I'll say no. If you ask me whether it healed me, I'll say partly. Because some wounds don't close. They just stop bleeding loud enough for others to hear. But in the silence, I found clarity. And in the pain, I found purpose. My name is Bright. I was forgotten. But I did not stay broken. And in the end, I proved that the son they discarded was the man they were never worthy of. The end. And that brings us to the end of today's story. What are your thoughts? What would you have done in that situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we read every single one. Your perspective matters, and we love hearing how these stories connect with you. If this story moved you, inspired you, or even shocked you, don't forget to like the video, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss another true life tale from Whispers of Reality. We have more powerful stories coming your way, real stories that deserve to be heard. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers.